Hey all, I'm Cholasca, and I think everyone can build craft in Destiny 2. It's hard to know where to start as a new player, so each week we'll break down the exotics that Xur is selling and come up with some ideas to make the most of them. Then we'll use a 3-level system to slowly ease into our build making process. This way, you can follow along no matter how far you are in your Destiny journey. Level 1 will use the resources that everyone has access to. Level 2 will assume you've been playing for a while and are wondering how your mods and guns fit together. Finally, in Level 3, we'll really make the build come to life using every resource available. If you thought Warlocks brought air supremacy with them, think again. This week we'll look at how Titans can control the skies and be the enforcer from on high. I promise you, you'll never see Titan gameplay the same again. Okay, so for the Titan one, it's going to be a weird one. It's Lion Rampant. It says, Jump Jets provides additional aerial maneuverability and enables accurate hip fire while during lift, or in this case that means the Titan jump. And importantly, provides a large benefit to the airborne effectiveness stat of all weapons while hip firing. So this airborne effectiveness stat is something that we really want to be taking a look at here. Every gun, including the gun that Xur is selling right now, Hard Light, has a airborne effectiveness stat. And this is going to be more or less how accurate and stable a gun is while you're in the air. And the stat's going to go all the way from 0 to 100, where 0 means the gun's basically useless in the air, and then 100 meaning that it'll perform about as well as on the ground. And there's 3 different ways that you can get airborne effectiveness. There's number 1, the actual stat from the gun. There's number 2, your exotic of choice, which in this case is going to be Lion Rampant, which is giving us a plus 50 behind the scenes. And then there's the Icarus grip on legendary weapons, which isn't going to really help us with Hard Light in this case. And then there's also fragments that can help out. There are 2 different ones that can help a Titan with airborne effectiveness. 2 fragments are Whisper of Hedrons for stasis when you freeze an enemy, and the Ember of Tempering on Solar. Solar weapon final blows grant recovery, and while it is active, your weapons have increased airborne effectiveness. And this is getting us, I think, about 10. So Lion Rampant plus our Hard Light here, and then with our fragment means that we're getting pretty close to 100, so we can kind of take a look at what that feels like. The exotic perk for Hard Light is that you can hold down your reload button to switch its elemental affinity, and since our fragment only works with solar guns, we're going to switch it to solar. Alright, so this is, I think, a really good example because the reason you'd want to be, maybe shooting in the air a little bit is because you're trying to not get hit by all these screebs or other enemies that are throwing grenades on the ground. And so this is a viable playstyle in certain situations, so being able to build into air effectiveness is definitely a boon here. And we can kind of see just right off the bat that it's pretty good. We're struggling at a distance to hit these guys, but I think we're not really going to be sticking with Hard Light for too long. It just does not do very well. Hip firing. So another weird thing to kind of note about Lion Rampant is that it's really pushing you to hip fire. For instance, you can kind of stay up here in the air pretty long as a Titan, but as soon as you aim down sights, your jump just starts to disappear. But if you're kind of just hip firing, then you can kind of be up here for like 3 to 4 seconds. Alright, so breaking down level 1, we're going to take a look at our subclass here, Sunbreaker. As mentioned, we're going to be using Ember of Tempering to get that airborne effectiveness. We won't be using the barricade much, but it can help protect us while we're on the ground, which might be kind of rare in this build. I tried out all the different jumps with Lion Rampant, and I do like high lift. It's just really leaning into being able to jump up high and get away from the enemies that are on the ground. The other ones do a pretty good job of that, but high lift is just going to give us that really quick verticality that we're looking for. And then as for the melee, I went with Hammer Strike because you can use it as a little bit of mobility while in the air, though throwing hammer is also probably pretty good. And then for grenades, anything is really good here. And for level 1, we'll be leaving aspects and the rest of the fragments alone for kind of whatever you want. Going back to that hammer strike, the idea is that you could kind of jump up in the air, kind of take a peek at what's going on, and then quickly dash back if you want to, and just kind of exploring from up high. And what's kind of nice is that you can actually chain your high jump and then your dash and then back into another jump. So as for the stats that we're going to be going for, I think this is going to be the rare situation where I think that you should be going for mobility on a Titan, just because the more mobility stat you have, the higher your jump height is, and the faster you kind of move. So both of those are going to help us out a lot when we're using Lion Rampants. So I found some high mobility armor along with a couple of stat increase mods for mobility, just to get me right there to that 100. And then the rest of it I started putting into resilience, just to help stay alive a little bit better. But you can kind of start working towards any other stat that you would want. So I said Lion Rampant's going to be a little bit of a weird one because we aren't going to be really building into Lion Rampant, more as Lion Rampant is going to help us build into another gun. I went through and I took a look at all the guns that I had, ranked them by their airborne effectiveness stat, which I use DIM for, and if you want I can show you how to do that in another video. But a couple of options stood out to me. One was the Callus Mini Tool, and the other one was Drang. I really like the Callus Mini Tool, so I kind of pulled that in here. So the Callus Mini Tool has an airborne effectiveness of 28, and then if we throw on a Icarus Grip mod, that becomes 43. And then with our Lion Rampant of 50 while hip firing, that gets us already to 93. And then with our fragments, that'll just get us right there to that sweet spot of 100. Another cool thing that we can build into here is Incandescent, that says that defeating a target spreads Scorch to those nearby. Being on Sunbreaker, there's a lot of ways for us to kind of use Scorch and spread it around. So I've got a couple of fragments here that's going to really help with that. Ember of Ashes, which is going to just mean that every time we add Scorch, we're adding even more Scorch. The Ember of Eruption, that says that whenever our Scorch stacks finally get up to a point where it would cause the enemy to ignite, that ignition has a greater effect area. And then also those ignitions with Ember of Char will spread Scorch to other targets, which we can then continue this chain of scorching and igniting. And then our aspects are just going to help with that a little bit. We've got Soul Invictus, that every time that we defeat Scorch targets, which with Incandescent is going to be kind of all the time, it's going to create sunspots. And sunspots are going to provide these little landing pads for our build that we can kind of drop down to when we need to refuel our jets, and we can get a little bit of healing while we're in Soul Invictus, and then we'll be able to take off and continue our fight. And then we're throwing on Roaring Flames just in case we can get any kind of ignition chains happening. This will kind of help make those even stronger. And since we're not really building into any abilities here, the other armor mods that we might look at probably are going to be a little bit different than we've done before. Instead, what I'm going to be doing is using mods just to keep buffing this gun as much as possible. So I'm going to throw on a SMG targeting mod, and then I'm going to throw on a SMG loader mod, just so we're getting a little bit more performance out of our SMG while we're flying around and using it. And one weakness that I've kind of noticed playing around with level 1 here is that you're great at avoiding all the melee enemies, all the grenades, things have a hard time hitting you in the air, but snipers do tend to hit you. So I would recommend putting on a sniper damage resistance mod. And then for Orbs of Power, we can get them pretty easily with Harmonic Siphon, since we'll be on a solar subclass that'll match our solar weapon. So we'll get Orbs of Powers with the Callus Mini Tool. And then we can use Better Already. So every time that we pick up an Orb of Power, we start healing. And this will work pretty well with this idea that we're going with so far of being able to kind of like land for a pit stop and heal up a bit before going back into the air. So the Orb of Power will help us do that. Also, our sunspots will help us do that. And then while we're there, we could also kind of reload up on our grenade energy, and so we can throw on a couple bomber mods here. Alright, so keeping up in the air, continuing to just rain down And so we can kind of see that we've created a sunspot here, along with an orb of power. So if we needed the health, we could pick it up here. And then we're all ready to go and can move on to the next group of enemies. Also, avoiding those little bombs is another nice added benefit to this build. And we can continue and do this, staying safe, shooting from up high. Being able to move around in the air like this does mean that I'm pretty mobile, and the boss is having a hard time hitting me. And I don't have to worry about all those melee guys that were on the ground, or this little thing. It's not going to hit me. And while I'm up here, shooting rockets is a lot easier. A lot harder to blow myself up when I'm in the air. Level 3, let's take a look at some combat style mods to really make this build come to life. So we can use Explosive Well Maker here on a solar piece. That's just going to spawn a solar elemental well every time we get a kill with explosive damage, which this could be an ignition, I believe Scorch sometimes counts, and or grenades, or if you've got a rocket launcher, any of those will create solar elemental wells. Then with those solar elemental wells, we can use Well of Life, which will give us even more healing. So kind of keeping with that idea of every time we land, we're getting some healing from Sol Invictus, and the Better Already from our Orbs of Power, but now also Well of Life. Then something really interesting is Elemental Armaments, which gives us a chance to get a Elemental Well matching our subclass when we get kills with a gun that match our subclass. And since they do match Solar, then we will be getting chances of even more Solar Elemental Wells when we get kills with our Callus Mini Tool with this mod. And then, on top of all of that, since we're really leaning into just buffing our gun as much as possible, I'm throwing on Font of Might. That every time we pick up a Solar Elemental Well, then our Callus Mini Tool will be dealing even more damage. And because I want to have that damage up as much as possible, as well as keeping our healing up as much as possible, I'm going to throw on the Elemental Time Dilation that says any kind of time-based effects for our Elemental Wells now lasts even longer. So it's great for this right here. Lots of exploding enemies, lots of melee enemies. They can't touch me. I can do whatever I want. Big melee guys don't know what to do. Time to get over here. Got a well here for some healing. Back here. Got some more healing there. Got more sunspots for more healing. Back in there. And we're done. Alright, so verdict is, it's great for content with lots of melees and exploding enemies, and a lot of aerial space. So in this catch crash, I was a little confined to the area I was in, but once we were outside, we were feeling really good. That being said, snipers are a really big problem, so I'm probably not taking this into a GM, just where the snipers are just gonna basically one-shot you. But it was a lot of fun to play. Remember, if you don't have these mods, be sure to check Banshee and Ada in the tower to buy their rotating assortment of mods daily. Thanks for listening. Subscribe and hit that bell icon so you get notified in time to get to Sir before he disappears, and so that you can follow along in the next video. Comment down below to let me know what your favorite build was and how you made it your own.